Hi, and welcome to Section 3, Tips to Create and Use Classes Easier and Faster. We will learn about simplifying class properties with constructor parameters, using secondary constructors for additional flexibility, implementing custom behavior for fields for adding functionality, using object expressions for thread-safe calls, and using companion objects to replace Java static fields. In this video, we will discuss simplifying class properties with constructor parameters. We will introduce the initializer block for initializing class properties, how to specify parameters and initialize properties with the primary constructor, and how to initialize a superclass properties with the primary constructor. In this video, we're going to create the primary constructor and demonstrate the initializer block. So first of all, we'll create a class. Now we can create our primary constructor, and we can give our primary constructor a visibility modifier. So I'll just make it public. Now we call the constructor, and inside the constructor we can pass a parameter. I'm going to call this parameter timeout, and because the parameter name is going to have the same name as the property name, I'm just going to append the underscore in front of it. Now I'll create the property that will be initialized with the timeout parameter, and we will initialize the property inside an initializer block. So I will create an initializer block and initialize the property. Now inside the main thread we will create an instance of standard thread3 class and pass in a timeout value, and now display that value. We'll use a string template and run the code. And as you can see, we are successfully initializing the class parameter with the timeout value of 100. We can do the declaration and assignment together, so we can remove the initialization body. Now run the code, and you can see we're still successfully initializing the timeout value. Because the timeout property is being initialized with the corresponding constructor parameter timeout, we can do the initialization inside the construct parentheses. So I'll remove the property code, remove the underscore for timeout, and add the val keyword. The public visibility modifier for the primary constructor is not required, so that can be removed. And if a constructor doesn't have any annotations or visibility modifiers, the constructor key name can be removed as well. And we can also remove the body code curly braces. Now run the code, and we still successfully initialize the class properties with the right values, but the code here is much more concise and easier to read by using the primary constructor. Now let's turn our class into a thread by extending the thread class. And let's implement the run function and display the current thread information. And start the thread. Now run the code. And we can see the current thread information here. Now I want to demonstrate on how we can use the primary constructor to initialize properties on our superclass thread. And for this demonstration, I want to initialize the thread class's name property. I'll add another parameter to the primary constructor, which I'll call name, and pass the name of that parameter into our superclass constructor. Now add the name argument when we create the instance of the class, and I think I'll just call this standard thread. Run the code. And as you can see here, we've initialized the superclass property's name with a standard thread. So we've demonstrated here how you can set superclass properties by using the primary constructor. Using the primary constructor can make class initialization more concise. The primary constructor cannot contain initialization code. Use the initializer block instead. And the primary constructor is responsible for initializing superclass properties.